A question was asked. This was a Zoom call with the heads of all the departments. What do you see in 10 years for the young people? And everybody was talking about more jobs, blah, blah, blah. My thing is, I said, I expect them to take over. I want them to be the elected official. I want them to be the heads of the corporations. I want them to be in charge of philanthropy. I want them to be running the school board. I want them to be the principals. But I want them to come with our principles, the values of diversity. That's what I want. That's what I want in 10 years. And I'm willing to do whatever. That's why I keep working. Born in Evansville, Indiana, raised primary years in Chicago, and we came to Los Angeles. We escaped to Los Angeles, literally in 1956. My brother and sister and I, we were all in foster care. My sister and I, uniquely, which I knew when I grew up, were always together. We have two unique experiences as foster kids. We were always together, and we had the same social worker from the day we went in to the day we came out. And my brother was raised in a separate foster home. He went into foster care at 9 months. We went in, I guess we were 5 or 6, because we remember living with our grandparents, and then our parents came to get us and took us to Chicago to foster placement. So that's where we spent 5 years, 6, 7 years of our life. And when I say escaped, it's because my father kind of got his act together and petitioned for us, and he was able to secure my brother at 9 years old. But they didn't let women have females. So he actually paid for my aunt and her husband to come from LA to Chicago and stay with us for a year. And as soon as that year was up, we were on the train. We were gone. He didn't want to have any questions about what was happening with our lives. And of course, when we came to LA, we still didn't have much, but we weren't ever going to be a part of any social services system. I was 12, and we lived on the east side, on the true east side, not East Los Angeles, but the east side, San Pedro and 20th Street. I have a long-term affection and relationship with All People's Christian Center, because we went to that church. For me, it was an introduction to multiculturalism, because the church was, the minister was white, the attendees were a mix of Japanese and black and white. So I met people who had been in the Japanese internment camps. Later in high school, I met parents who had been in the Nazi concentration camps. After coming to California, at that period in the mid-50s, it was very multicultural. So the various junior high schools we went to, simply because we were moving around until we settled at Fauché. I graduated from Fauché, junior high school at that point. And when I went on to manual arts, the population was mixed, and the public schools were much more diverse than they are now. We deliberately learned about one another. We went to Catholic churches together, the mix of black and white and Japanese and Jewish, and we went to temples together, and we just thought it was living the life. That's just the way the world was. I will make this comment. I was at manual arts, and all the kinds of things that I was saying, and during that period of time, you could graduate midterm. So I'm a winter 60 graduate. But the school annuals were printed in the summer. So while I was running around with my multicultural, multi-talent in drama, in piano, and et cetera, when I looked at my annual, our group, our winter group, the student body president, the heads of the clubs, the blah, 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 they were black, they were Japanese, they were white, they were Jewish, they were Latino. The summer class was all black. And I couldn't figure out how that happened. I was going to school, but the transition was happening around me. So I was obviously in my own, we were obviously in our own bubble. So some of the issues that were growing up, bubbling up around the community, I never understood in terms of kind of, well, we don't like these kind of people. We don't like these kind of people. I don't even know what that means. My son's godparents are Jewish. We went to Holman for them to be, for my son to be baptized. We've been friends forever. As I was stumbling around in college and then, fell in love, got married, had some kids, got divorced, went back to college, and graduated from college. As I tell people, in 1969, I graduated from college to unemployment. So I was unemployed with 2 kids as a single parent. So I was volunteering everywhere, had my kids in all kinds of programs. Finally got a job with Head Start. So I was a Head Start social worker for a little while. And then my first experiment in advocacy was when I was hired in 1971 with the District Attorney's Youth Advisory Board. I was just lucky to hook up with a group of grown folk who understood that the community needed some representatives. They needed some people who cared about them and who would teach them about these systems. And so we were trying to get the systems to change and to control people. So we created programs like Law Awareness Week, in which we went to Locke High School, Jordan High School, Fremont, Manual Arts, Centennial. All of those were the schools that we related to, and we would take over every single social studies class for the day. And in that class, we would have someone from probation and or parole, from LAPD or from the Sheriff's Department, from the school district, from the health department, to help young people learn about not only the law, but what the resources were. But one of the things we did is that we had assemblies for those, in which we brought in the prison preventers, which is a group of prisoners from the state penitentiary, and they had created their own program. When Sylvia Mitchell was over the women's prison, we brought in women also, where they talked about what prison was like. And then the other people that we had were juvenile court judges. We also did gang work, in which we would go to projected hotspots to try to interfere and try to stop the violence that was going on. We insisted that the recreation centers have youth programs that give them something to do. And we would be there, this army of grown people who represented all these various departments, to manage it. The young people who were part of my district attorney's youth advisory board were a select group who became more select. They were randomly selected in the beginning, but we spent a lot of time on civic education, leadership development. So at some point, because I was out there till 1974, they said, well, all you have to do is pick up the good kids. All your kids are student body presidents. I said, you know why they're student body presidents? Because they gather in our conference room and talk about what do you need to get elected. And they did. One of the things that they didn't realize is that the kids who were part of my program, who yes were running and being student body presidents, they grew up in Nicholson Gardens too. These were their buddies. And their buddies were telling them, and they were telling me. That's how I knew. And at some point, I even heard from them directly, because they believed that we cared about them and we would take care of them. And we would take care of their mama or their sister if we couldn't take care of them. I was doing training on welfare. Kids were talking about, well, welfare, blah, 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 blah. And I went to the board and said, this is how much the check is, and this is what things cost. So I don't even want you talking to me about whether or not your mother is hustling on the street. How are you going to eat? So here's the deal. You have to go with the commodity that you have. We're trying to help you get a better commodity, trying to help your mother get a better commodity, but don't be talking about her while she's trying to take care of you. And your hustling older brother. We want to fix that, but I don't want you running around being disrespectful. All of that crazy work brought me to the attention of people in the mayor's office. Most people know me in terms of my reputation from my work with Tom Bradley in 1974. And I always try to remind people that I had a youth council before. And that youth council was much more activist, and we used mostly the Saturdays to travel so that you take young people who are in San Pedro and you take them to the North Valley. You take kids from the Watts community, you take them to the North Valley, and you say things to them like, this is a city-funded recreation center in your neighborhood, and this is a city-funded recreation center in this other neighborhood. And why do they look so different? Some of the ones in the valley were, they had arcades. I mean, it was like going into a fun zone. And in other communities, they weren't even, cutting the grass. But for them to understand, for the ones from the valley to understand, from the ones from San Pedro to understand, and the ones from other communities to understand that there's an opportunity for you to live in these communities, to have jobs in these communities, and to be engaged in what is happening. So it was a heady kind of time. So since my boss, Bill Elkins, was doing the disabled and the aging, I did a lot of stuff with the aging when we created it, a lot of stuff with disability when we created it, and there were all kinds of exciting experimental programs developed, and they were inclusive. So I learned a lot about all of these programs because I could just go and I could participate, and I could, based on my experience in working in South LA and really East LA too, I had an opportunity to say to people, that doesn't make sense for the people who live here. The goal always for me is civic engagement. And I learned that early when I was working with the District Attorney's Youth Advisory Board. You need to know, the government does make a lot of decisions, and you need to know where the pressure points are. So I'm committed to having people to understand how the world operates and where the pressure points are so that you're not wasting your energy in writing letters to the wrong people. You can control your environment, but you have to know how. I feel a strong responsibility. How do you go from being a foster kid and then, kind of raised by a single father, and then knowing all 5 mayors and county supervisors? I mean, not just knowing them, but knowing them. How do you do that? And I have a responsibility to help others know that that's possible. Well, in terms of how I see the role of young people and how the community responds to young people, the connection with civic engagement isn't there. People are not trying to teach them about life post high school or college or whatever. They're not engaging them in a way. I don't see any deliberate attempt to try to bring people together, and I think it has to be at young people. What would I say to the young people today? Read and listen. Read everything and listen to what people have to say. It'll make you smarter. It'll make you more comfortable. Be very deliberate in terms of who you know and what you do. You're not afraid of people that you know about. As I said, my thing is civic engagement. Wherever you're working, who's the manager, who's the owner of the McDonald's that you're at, um, uh, and what's happening in the community before they close your McDonald's down. Join the neighborhood council. Be engaged, but read, 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 and listen, and listen, and but be engaged. Yeah.